Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Deep Blue Renegade podcast. My name is Molly, also known as the Deep Blue Renegade, and I'd like to welcome you guys to episode 386. Today is Saturday, October 9th, 2021, and I'm glad you could join me today. It is recording later than usual, so there is setting sun I can barely avoid. I'm drinking water. It is okay. What was it? It was the case where we ended up entering the zone of tourism because this week it is Fleet Week in San Francisco. So the Dear Sweet Lovable One suggested that we go down to the North Shore of San Francisco and watch the air show, and that we did. And because we ended up doing whatever ride share down, that meant that what would it be? We ended up walking a pretty decent way to get away from the kludge, which is the zone of tourism. Because what would it be? Because it is a little bit crazy there. But I did get to have a nice outing with my hat, so that was lovely. Super cute. But it's also probably a little bit too warm for that nonsense as well. And why not? We can just show the complete set. So these were all made with the same fiber optic gradient. This was made with the darkest end and about 50 grams of yarn. This one was made with both ends of the ball very subtly. You can see a very subtle gradient going on here. And then this one is the final one in the series. So this one I was working on last week and was almost done. This one I ended up doing sort of chunkier stripes and sort of bigger sections. And this is all I have left now. So some of this, I don't know, probably second or third latest blue in a little ball. Not nearly enough in order to finish much more than this. So this hat's pretty small. I did like an area scaling basically, and so it's the case where it's like, well, if this hat is 16 inches in diameter and use this much yarn, what does the square root of 16 lead you to? Doesn't entirely make sense, but whatever. So 3 hats done, all out of the same skein of yarn, because it was a pretty substantial skein of yarn in the grand scheme of things. What was it? So the other thing that I'm working on, which wasn't exclusive, but now I'm feeling like something strange had happened, but I can't quite, whatever. We're just gonna go with it. I'm not 100% sure, but we'll figure something out. That is weird. So the other thing that I was working on was yet another Tensfield hat. So this one, I am knitting with some of my, with my class sample from the Clemis and Clemis drum carding for fractals class. So I am about 1 row log into the color progression here, maybe a little bit further. So started with white and then slowly started to have blips of blue in there. And then that eventually led into some yellow now. So last I measured, I was at the nowhere close stage, and I don't assume that I have made it too much farther than that. I think I have the other needle that I've been using, because at some point you start getting into a much smaller diameter and you can't really get away with using a single circular, but right now it looks slightly hilarious because I'm guessing this is probably like a 16 inch circular, maybe it's a 12, so like a foot, looks longer than a foot. So it is a little bit crowded right now, but such is life. So the plan is to knit until I have about 20 inches, I think. And then I'll probably end up doing a similar folded brim to the other hat that I ended up doing, just to use up some more of the yarn. But I did look the yarn up, and I got 717 yards of 3-ply in 3 ounces. So even though I'm knitting this on ones, it actually isn't a super dense gauge. It's still got some slink and flow to this fabric. The yarn is wonderfully soft though, because it was merino. It still is merino. It hasn't stopped being merino. So that is cool. And I figured that the color changes were fast enough in this that it would highlight the construction a little bit better. What I'm not so sure about is whether or not it's ends up maybe almost being like a little bit obscured. Let's see how I am. Whatever. Highly distractible today. But yeah, no. So was all in all a pretty chill week on the knitting front. Would it be? So that might represent a pretty decent amount of knitting, just because what would it be? You're not getting anywhere fast knitting a hat on size 1 needles, but whatever. It's okay. And then just to say I spun even just a little bit, I'll just spin a little bit on the podcast. Yeah, no, the knitting mojo has still been very high. I've tried to redirect my mojo so that I am focusing a little bit more on knitting handspun. So I figured that was a good plan to knit up some 10 field hats in order to use up some of the handspun, basically. As you do. Oh, what would it be? But yeah, so not too crazy. I think I just barely started this section of the turtle, so not too crazy there. And now we're starting to look dark. Oh, maybe that was my computer starting to get bored. I was gonna say, it's like, why does this look this way now? So it's okay. It's not. It would be, as far as lighting concerned, it's not super terrible. But it isn't because, or would it be the case where I could definitely see where there are times when it would actually be pretty good to spend in like the day-to-day sort of stuff. There are definitely meetings I'm attending, which it's probably better not to have the camera on, because at some point you get a big enough crowd, it doesn't make sense anymore. It was like you having your video on ends up being a little bit of a distraction. So that is fine. Would it be? It sort of felt like this week was the first week where I was almost a little bit useful. Or at least I was maybe trying to be useful. That might be a better turn of phrase there. So, would it be? So, just would it be lots of things to learn. I had a training, and I also have a training for a decent portion of next week as well. So I'm learning on how to do reliability statistics. So that's a morning training in California. The person conducting the training is in Eastern time, so this makes sense. So there's been a pretty decent amount of knitting time, even though I don't have a lot to show for it here, as you do. So, ew, that doesn't belong there. So, there has been a small amount of spinning content this week. Would it be? And besides the fact that I ended up knitting on this now accidentally secret project for quite some time, today I have to laugh a little bit that I can't even show you the progress on the podcast. And then also be like, am I sunburned? A legitimate concern in my book. But shouldn't be too crazy. So that is the story there. So hopefully this isn't turning out too ridiculously fine. But whatever, such is life. So yeah, some excitement, but not a ton of excitement. Oops. Just surprised that I ended up being busy today. So not a terrible thing. And hopefully there will be a decent amount of knitting time next week because I still have the class. Would it be going to spend a decent portion of tomorrow knitting, so that should be fun. I need to go to the grocery store and pick up a couple of ingredients. So one of those are going to be a beef case where the thing I want to make calls for tomato paste. So yeah, whatever. And there are other, you know how there are always like would it be goofy things that you end up running out of. So I think for me right now, well, like, so it's just life continues on and it is fine. So one of the things is I have to make a decision if I'm going to be making potato crust for my squash pie, or if I am going to be doing a gluten-free pie crust. Not like it's too important in the grand scheme of things, but just try something I have to make soon. Because I definitely have potatoes, so could totally do it. But yeah, so things are funny like that. But it's just gonna be a super short one, guys. I feel like what would it be? The rest of it's just speculation at this point. Like, will I be casting out something new next week? Who knows? We shall see. I can definitely see how the desire to knit down more of the sweater stash could be good, but I also am cognizant of the fact that the hand spun does seem to be overflowing a bit. So it may be the case where I have released sufficient pressure on the sweater quantity stash that I can now go back to focusing on the hand spun stash for a bit. I'm not too worried about the other aspects of the stash because that seems to be not too bad, but yeah, might be the case where I don't know, or maybe I figure out some sort of sweater pattern that I can end up knitting with the hand spun stash. That is also a possibility as well. But it definitely seems to be a little bit chaotic and overflowing right now. So I don't know if part of that is that things weren't staying up particularly well or what, but probably should be addressed. And it may be the case where, especially when it comes to the more samply ends of the stash, like that might be something that needs to be explicitly dealt with, as you do. Yeah, it's just funny how that ends up working out. But I'm looking at it, and it does look very gorgeous and enticing. So there really isn't much of an excuse. It's just the challenge of the challenge comes in figuring out like what the right pattern is for this kind of yarn. So I don't think I'm just going to continually knit 10 field hats because I am starting to feel a bit of the garter boredom at this point. It was more like, I have no clue what I'm going to do with that yarn. And this seemed to be a perfectly valid way to use it. So off I went. But for some of the other skeins, maybe I do need to go at it a different way. I don't know. There was thought of Hitafude, so there's that. But yep. So it could just be where I am just completely derailed because I want to knit something completely different now. But whatever. I'm not going to give myself a hard time. As you do. So shenanigans. trying to think if they're, I don't know. It's alright. But what would it be? It'd be the case where I am now feeling like a bigger project would be a good thing. So that's probably fine. Perfectly acceptable. So with that, I hope you guys have a lovely week, and I look forward to talking to you guys next week. So take care, guys. Bye-bye.